Hey everybody, Dan Lapel for New Focus Recordings. Really excited to be joined by Alicia Lee. She's got a great album, Conversations with Myself, solo clarinet and clarinet and electronics. Comes out this Friday, January 28th. Hey Alicia, how you doing?
Hi, Dan. Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So this is a beautiful project that fits into maybe the growing genre of pandemic solo projects. But I
I
don't.
know.
That's not. I don't say that derisively at all. I actually think it's a testament to human perseverance.
That's a nice way to think of it. Yeah. I mean, I'm realizing now that yeah, there are a lot of albums that came out of the pandemic that were, maybe out of necessity. A lot of people doing stuff on their own. So, yeah, it's becoming its own genre.
No, I mean it totally makes sense, and uh, people being drawn to music that it has smaller forces and is able to be pulled together within the context. And I imagine a lot of these, or some of these pieces, were probably pieces that you were working on pre-COVID, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The Boulez is that's a piece that I've played for a few years now. I did it for the first time about 10 years ago. So I always wanted to come back to it
Yeah,
and get a recording of it. I've done it live. So, to have an opportunity to get into the studio to do both parts that way, I was always looking for a reason to do that. And this seemed like a great
yeah,
reason.
totally. Of course, this is Pierre Boulez's Dialogue de l'ombre double. And
That's
also
right.
on the album, Dai Fujikawa's Contour, Isang Yoon's Monologue, Unsuk Jin's Advice from a Caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, and Hideaki Amori's Split. Um,
Hmm.
and it was cool, like in your notes, you talked about the idea of like a solo album as having this sort of monologue component. But of course, that immediately sort of creates a contrast with the Boulez, which really is all about like this conversation with your electronic double, right?
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I mean, I think you said it, but I'm someone who typically feels more comfortable playing with other people. Um,
Right.
I love I like playing chamber music. That's usually where I find myself. So to to put together an album where I was just all by myself felt like kind of a daunting task. And I mean, that's where the idea came from, conversations with myself, just to,
Yeah.
fill up silence a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, there's something also about the timbre and the quality of a solo clarinet that just feels
Mhm.
very intimate and sort of, well, you allude to this too in the notes. I think it's like a sage voice giving you a certain kind of like advice or something. It's I can't really put maybe it's because it's such a pure sound that the fundamental is so present, and
Yeah.
it's so direct, you know. But I
Right.
there's this music has a really great range of ways of using the instrument, and sort of creating different dimensions. So it doesn't have, even the Isang Yung piece, which is literally called monologue, doesn't actually ever feel entirely like a monologue. It feels like different voices get established with
Yeah.
texture.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe should we take a listen to a little bit of maybe the chin is a good place to start. It's a
Great.
bit more extroverted, and then chat about the piece in general and what you think is going
Yeah.
on. So
Great.
let's take a listen from Advice from a Caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland by Unsuk Chin.
So this is actually taken from her opera, Eunsook Chin's opera Alice in Wonderland, and
Ah,
there's
okay,
this
sorry, I didn't realize. Yeah.
yeah, there's this extended interlude featuring the bass clarinet of all things, this 10-minute solo in the middle of the opera where the bass clarinet is meant to be dressed up like a caterpillar on stage, playing the solo for Alice, and then it's supposed to be like he's speaking to her through the bass clarinet. And there are actually words that go along with every part of the piece, which unfortunately, we this is an audio format, so you can't see the words, but you can always check it out. There's some great recordings on YouTube of the live performance where you see the words. Um, so it's pretty hilarious, just the image of, someone needs to pull someone out of the orchestra, dress them up like a caterpillar, and put them on stage in the middle of the opera. It's already pretty ridiculous. Um,
Did you
and
have you done that the opera performance, the
I
opera version?
haven't.
Ah,
No, I haven't. That sounds pretty terrifying, but
yeah. Do
that,
you know any clarinetists who've done that piece?
I not in that
Not
form.
yeah. I mean, I know other clarinetists have played it like in isolation, this solo. But
Sure.
now I'm gonna scour
Yeah.
the internet and see if I can find a clip of this because that does sound
You
like
got it. There is a performance that I think is done in Europe somewhere, and the costumes are terrifying. Like
yeah.
someone went all out in the kind of like the trippier side of Alice in
Okay.
Wonderland for
Yeah.
sure.
Cool.
And so you can see it. It's really out. It's very
We'll,
cool though.
we'll when we put together the final edit of this, we'll see if we can find that link and either
Yeah.
put it in a sidebar here or maybe even try to
But
find a way to weave it in. But that's very cool. I didn't realize that. So thanks for that info. I mean, do you know the rest of the piece well? Like, what's the clarinet writing
the rest of the
like?
opera,
Yeah.
I don't know it super well. I mean I've listened to bits and pieces of it. I mean, what I can tell about her writing, kind of in general, usually it's like very energetic and kind of like and I think often there's this like a bit of a wink sometimes with some of the writing, and you hear that a little bit for sure in the opera itself, in the vocal writing. I think it's quite acrobatic too for the singers.
Yeah.
And then certainly for this piece and the bass clarinet part in particular, pretty acrobatic writing. It kind of takes you all over the range, all through all the ranges of the bass clarinet, and the fact that there are words that go along with it, the libretto goes exactly along with every part of it, gives you a nice idea, for character and like what each thing is supposed to represent, you know.
In general, just the sort of acrobatic nature of the material in here is really sort of. I mean, there's a lot of virtuosity on this whole recording, but I feel like this piece, it's the most compressed in terms of sort of the
Yeah,
rate of change between types of things that you're doing from one moment to the next, uh,
yeah,
and it adds to that slightly comic sense.
totally.
Um, cool. So that's not the first piece on the record. That's fourth. Maybe let's backtrack to the second piece, which is the longest, the Boulez. But there's so much. What's the level of detail in Boulez's score in terms of how the electronics are mixed? Because this recording has an amazing amount of really elegantly done spatialization. And I guess I've heard the piece live, and I remember that as a component that was happening then too. But how specific is
Yeah.
Boulez about that?
He's incredibly specific, and that all that spatialization and all of that in the recording, you can thank Ryan Strieber for that, who recorded and produced it with me. But yeah, it's meant to be done. It's meant to be done live with someone actually manipulating the sound live as you play it. You know, the way that most people do it now these days, because the like, technology is such that it is, people will often, they'll just write a program that will make it much easier than the old analog way that it was
Right.
done in the 80s when
Yeah.
he wrote it. But he's very specific. There's supposed to be six speakers
Yeah.
around the hall, and for when directions for like these two measures come through this speaker, and then
Yeah.
these measures come through here. The amount of reverberation is also very specifically prescribed, and you go from like very dry moments to extremely wet, reverberant sound, and it's all written into the notes. It's very extensive notes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, are there specific instructions about the live performer moving around the stage as well, or
yeah,
because I feel like that's my recollection of seeing it.
yeah, yes.
The cool thing about, I mean, it's cool even if there wasn't this other sort of narrative, but at least from my point of view, this piece, it really manages the relationship between the electronic and the live performer in a like a really uh, great way and a very dramatic way. And
Hmm.
it feels like these issues of space and distance, like because like more or less reverb like creates the sense that the electronics are either closer or further away from you.
Yeah,
At least to me, it sounds like this is like figured into Boulez's sense of drama as the piece sort of unfolds and as it gets a bit more tense in a way.
yeah,
How does that
totally.
feel like when you're playing it? Or I guess you're not necessarily really sensitized. You might just be playing it, you know.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess in the moment you're just trying to
You just
get
yeah
through the
yeah
note.
yeah
But when in a live performance, there is this because you go between basically playing live and then listening to your recorded self between
sure
each movement.
yeah
So you have an opportunity to actually listen and make a distinction between like yourself and your recorded self. And I think it's so smartly done. Obviously, he was a genius, like, and like the way it's written, yeah, all of like besides just the writing of the music, all of the notes and all of that is planned out exactly to create this like huge shape where it does end very dramatically,
yeah.
with yeah, with the shadow kind of taking over.
Oh, cool. Okay, so the interesting thing is I'm recording. I think I might have like interpreted it oppositely, that the live performer ousts the shadow. But I guess the truth is that on recording you wouldn't necessarily know one way or the other.
I don't really know what.
It's sort of
Yeah,
clearer live. You can
yeah,
observe literally when the performer is playing versus not.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
I think Ryan did a nice thing where he did differentiate between, and this is also like based on a lot of the notes in the score, but there is a differentiation in the way way it sounds between the shadow and the live performance, the live clarinet. And I think maybe it sounds a little bit more present for the live parts, and then the other ones can sound a little more dreamy.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is such a sort of consistent theme in so much electroacoustic music. This sort of battle between machine and man and whatever. And I think there's some instances where some composers that I've talked to actually feel like that gets mapped onto their electroacoustic pieces more than they necessarily want it to. But it seems like
Right.
in this piece, it's hard to assume that Boulez wasn't really gunning for this. I mean, it seems like it just really feels like it is about that in a very like concrete way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it seems like everything he did was pretty deliberate.
Yeah, right, totally. Plus, this was written in the 80s, right? Is that right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, it's almost like I'm not sure exactly when loop pedals started to become more popular, but in a weird way, is this is like a sort of loop pedal piece, you know?
Oh yeah,
and
totally, totally.
and the new performance practice that evolves out of that, where you're literally listening to essentially like a recording of yourself right after
Yeah.
you've played it, and all the sort of trauma that's associated with that, and the need to
Yeah.
sort of just let go and keep going, and uh
Right.
but it's really cool, and obviously, of course, on recording we can hear sort of an idealized version, and it's an exquisite recording. It's really beautiful. uh
Right.
cool. So, well, let's listen to maybe one of the sections that really highlights some of that spatialized stuff.
Great.
Great. Oh, that was so cool to hear that Boulez clip. Well, let's
Thank
talk
you.
about one more piece. It's the last piece on the record, "Split," by Hideaki Aomori, a colleague of yours for many years, right?
Yeah. I've known, yeah, we've known each other since we were undergrads. We had lessons, our private lessons back to back, so we would see each other all the time.
Yeah. Cool. I was actually digging around a little bit, checking out some of the other stuff that he does, and listening to a couple of his jazz albums, which are fantastic.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's a great jazz musician.
yeah, yeah. So that was really cool to see sort of different side of his work.
Hmm.
Uh, this piece starts out with this really great sort of texture where you're playing this sort of bass line and then bouncing up to these harmonics. It's like an octave plus a tenth uh,
Right.
above. I'm curious, like, with that technique, is that are you basically just sort of like lightly touching a fingering that triggers a specific harmonic? And could you hypothetically like switch to different partials, but by well, I shouldn't say anymore because I actually don't really know exactly how it works on the clarinet, but I'm curious.
You're not far off. I mean, so the way the clarinet is built is, on it's built on partials. We call them partials, where like if you play the fundamental note, you could get um, all the notes of the overtone series with the same fingering. So Hideaki is a clarinet player. He's a great clarinet player, and so he's really taking advantage and using his knowledge to his advantage to um, to show that aspect of the instrument. Where so he knows exactly like how to write so to get that to produce that kind of sound. And honestly, sometimes it's the kind of sound that you get by accident. When you like just something weird happens in your mouth and you get that sound, but he decided to really incorporate that into the writing of this piece.
Cool. And but if like hypothetically, if a composer wanted like a similar technique but with this seventh partial, that's possible, or it's
With
harder.
the seventh part, oh, with the seven parts, yeah, yeah, it's possible. Yeah, harder, but yeah,
Harder, right? I
possible
guess
for sure.
the higher you go up in the overtone series, it's probably going to be a little bit harder to get it to speak, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean those then they start getting closer and closer together, and so
Right.
then like it just becomes a matter of like manipulating all these things that you can't see in like
Right.
um yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. That I think about sometimes when I'm, working with wind players and like as a, I mean, I'm sort of a string player. Guitar is
Yeah,
weird, but more or less like string percussion. But it is true that everything is visual. I can look, I can see where
right.
I'm going to generate the seventh partial. Whereas you guys, it's
Yeah.
all like in here, and then maybe a little bit of adjustment right here. Cool. Well, let's let's listen to the passage in question at the beginning of Hideaki Mori's split. Great. Well, this was really cool. Fun to talk about a few of these pieces, and would encourage everybody out there to spend time with this album. It's wonderful. Really great range. Within the context of this focused program of solo clarinet music, I think we hear a lot of versatility in the way these composers approached these pieces, and also in the way that you approached the interpretations. So, congrats, and it's going to be fun to roll it out on Friday.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's give a little bit of shout out to folks who were involved in this record. Ryan Strieber engineered and produced it. Assistant editing by Charles Mueller,
Mm.
and recorded at Octavian Ryan Strieber's studio in Mount Vernon, New York. And you did additional producing on the editing end, and album artwork that we're looking at behind me is William Arnold, and photography by Austin Hargrave. So this is Alicia Lee's Conversations with Myself, FCR 302, coming out on Friday, January 28th, and you can find it all the places that you listen to music. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Alicia, and see everybody
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.